And, you know, actors, you know, we all have our niche and we all have like our bread and butter, as I would say. Mine is bratty daughter or angsty girl.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I get the opportunity to kind of break out of that, that's the most satisfying work.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Catherine Corcoran.
And I'm James A. Janisse. Welcome to Scream Dreams, the nightmares that shaped us, where we talk to your favorite filmmakers and creatives about what really scares them. Today we're talking to Sierra McCormick, an actor.
Hello.
A very experienced actor, despite her young age.
Yeah, that is true. I kind of take that for granted a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, you've already had almost 2 decades.
No, you're correct.
Of professional experience.
When did you start? And how did you start getting into the business?
I started when I was 8 professionally, and it was definitely something that like I really, really wanted to do. I had to beg my parents to let me do it. I was kind of a difficult to have in class kid, and so in school I went to like a very strict religious school, so they were not about that.
Oh, what religion? Was it a Catholic
Episcopalian
school? Oh, okay.
Which is almost like Catholic school. They didn't have fathers and nuns and shit, but like the trauma's still there.
Yeah, I was Catholic school for 5 years. Yeah.
I was like, if there's anything that's going to make you not religious, I think it's going to religious school as a kid. But was there, and they kind of insisted I do drama club, something to kind of like maybe get some of that energy out or whatever it was.
You go over there, play pretend, we don't have time for this.
No, literally, they were like, you are distraction. Like, you need to either like get some of that out or like you need to go kind of thing. So I did that and I really loved it. And my drama teacher, I'm from Palm Springs originally, and so she kind of suggested to my mom like, oh, you could go up to LA and you could try it out this way and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, mom, please. And she was kind of like, well, we can try it like one time for like an audition or something, but like if it doesn't pan out, you're gonna have to wait till you're older or whatever. And I booked that audition.
Wow, your first one?
Yeah, and it was
right out the gate.
Yeah, right. I was just like, okay, mom, so promise is a promise, but it was for something like that never became anything. It was like a talk show pilot for like kids. It was like something like that. So it wasn't something that was like any kind of substantial anything, but it was still my first audition and I booked it, so my mom had to let me keep doing it.
Nice.
That was her end of the deal. So
hold her to her word.
Yeah, and so started doing essentially just kind of like network TV after that. So like every mid-2000s like procedural you could think of.
Like I was Dick Wolf stuff or
no, never got to be in any Dick Wolf stuff.
Oh no, okay.
Yeah, man.
Oh, you missed out. Maybe now you can go back and do it.
Yeah, now I could go back and be like, Dick, what's up?
Yeah.
Like
look at these credits.
A lot of that stuff casts out of New York or like on the East Coast,
Yeah.
interestingly.
Okay.
So like you can see the difference between where people started based on what their like early procedural credits
CSI Vegas, Criminal Minds.
Okay,
And that was all
West
stuff
Coast.
that shot here in LA.
And as a kid you were doing that?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. So yeah, from age like maybe 8 to like 12, 13, I was doing like Monk and
Oh, cool.
Boston Legal and all those like shows and stuff like that, and a couple Christmas movies as everyone always does. And so yeah, it kind of started there, and then I worked on a lot of TV, and then after that I did a lot of like movies, a lot of indie movies, and eventually made my way to indie horror after working for Disney for a while, and so definitely wanted to switch it up from that, and indie horror was there for me. And
what was your first horror project?
My first horror project was called Some Kind of Hate, and it was Adam Egypt Mortimer's first movie.
Oh, cool.
And he's gone on to do a bunch of wonderful, brilliant things since then. But I got to be in his first movie, and I played the monster kind of in that movie.
Oh, fun.
Which was like satisfying every dream that like 10-year-old Sierra had ever had, because like whenever I was in like, you know, kid acting class, or like whenever I'd go to auditions and like adults would ask me like, what do you want, like what's your dream thing, like what do you want to do, and I'd be like, I want to be in a horror movie, but I want to be the scary thing. Like that was my that was my goal, and so I got to fulfill that in Some Kind of Hate, and I'm this very unique sort of slasher villain. It was a wonderful experience. Yeah, it was fantastic.
You were saying before we started that you've always been a horror fan. Is there like one particular film or like role that you've always like admired, or even one recently?
Yeah, like I really love Andrea Riseborough's work in the genre with Mandy and Possessor, but particularly Mandy. I love that movie so much. I love
I'm a huge
like
fan.
his whole filmography. I'm obsessed with.
I always call Mandy like the prog metal of horror movies. That's what it feels like. It's so you're going off on these weird time signatures.
It's so sludgy and like just hypnotic in a way.
It's
but
very hypnotic.
like,
yeah.
And that movie has like one of the most like effective emotional through lines to me of any horror movie I've watched. Like it truly got me. Like I was like crying in the theater when I saw it. It was like my favorite movie of
Their relationship.
Yeah, their relationship and just the way that's treated and how it kind of motivates the whole movie. And I don't know. And when I saw it, I got to see it in a theater, which was wonderful. I got to see it at the Cine Lounge in Hollywood, which is one of the best places you could see a movie like that. Like a lot of people were like laughing at it kind of, which like I get, you know, when people kind of feel a certain way, they might laugh or
There's
whatever.
some funny parts. The underwear vodka chugging. Yeah.
But like to me, that's like it can be funny, but when I watched it, to me it's like, oh my God, this is so traumatic. Like this is such like I feel like all the emotions are played for absolute realism in that movie. And so I think that's why it got me so much. It's such a wonderful relationship movie, you know. I don't know, it gets me. Like the romantic relationship between the two of them is so wonderful. And I think Andrea Riseborough's kind of role would be the sort of stereotypical like dead girlfriend thing, but I think the way that the filmmaker and the actress like treats it kind of elevates it beyond that sort of typical stock kind of character.
Definitely.
I could go on about that movie for a very long time.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
It's one of my favorites.
Definitely one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah,
I think was Annihilation the same year, because like that one's up there for me too.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like that one nearly as much.
Oh no, you didn't?
Not as much as Mandy.
Okay,
like that's almost not fair. Like to be fair, like Mandy is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh,
like,
wow.
And I love that movie, and I love Beyond the Black Rainbow as well. His previous film. Like every 3 or 4 months or so, there comes a time where I'm like, I think it's about time to take some edibles and watch Beyond the Black Rainbow again. I think I just need to do that for myself. It's like a little ritual, like 3 to 5 times a year. I'm like, yep, I'm good for that. Like
To cleanse the palate.
literally, it does that.
I actually have a replica of the Beast on my wall in my house.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, the axe from Mandy.
What?
And what was funny is this is like kind of an infamous moment on my channel is when I covered that film, I bought that and I had it on the set. And after filming the episode, I like shifted it a little. I was like, oh, that sits there real nice. And then it fell and hit a light stand and cracked right in half.
No.
And it's on camera, me screaming like, no. And my now wife runs in and you hear her off camera be like, baby, are you okay? And I'm like, my fucking thing broke. And so I emailed the people who made it, Legion M, actually the producers. And I was like, I just bought this thing and it broke and I spent so much. Is there any way? And they sent me a replacement.
Oh my
as long as I
gosh.
just said on the video, like, hey, they sent me a replacement.
Oh my God.
Get yours if you want. But now the new one is firmly affixed to the wall.
Yeah,
in our
I'm like, you
family
better
room.
bolt that shit in.
What if
For
like
sure.
the broken
Earthquake-proof.
one?
The broken one we still have and we'll take to convention sometimes because it's such like a moment in the channel's history that people are like, is that the broken Mandy axe? And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's it.
It's got its own lore now outside of the movie.
I want to see it in like slow motion. Just, no.
Yeah, you just see it fall.
I'm sure it felt slow motion at the moment. Like,
Yeah, I just like the first day I owned this very expensive replica,
Oh.
cracks in half. And I'm just
Oh
like,
my
no.
God, that's devastating.
It's all good in the end.
Thank
so,
God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yes.
What would we do otherwise? So what gets you then? What if it's not really horror movies? Because you were saying earlier that you've watched them since you were a little
Yeah.
kid. What actually scares you? Do you even have nightmares?
So I think I was thinking about this, and so I think my fears could probably be separated into like 2 categories. And first category is things that make sense to be afraid of, like duh kind of category.
Like
and
what?
then
Like what?
like
Dogs.
dogs?
no, like
terrifying creatures. No.
like okay, like as someone who moves through the world as, you know, a feminine presenting person, I'm always afraid of being murdered at the hands of a guy.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like
totally.
shit like that, where it's like, okay, or like I'm afraid of I'm like falling off of a building, or like
Yeah.
falling out of something, or like
Yeah.
stuff like that, where it's like that makes sense.
Yeah,
Or
totally.
I have a fear kind of not dying all the way, and so being in that like half state of almost dying for a long time, like that freaks me out. That's a fear of
like
mine.
buried alive.
Or just like incapacitated on tubes
or
and
like,
not being able to communicate.
If you ever saw the movie The Lobster, oddly enough, there's like a moment in that movie that like made me want to crawl out of my skin, which was crazy because that movie also made me like belly laugh genuinely. But like crawl out of my skin is when the woman, she like jumps out of like the third story, and then throughout this other conversation that's happening, you just hear her kind of groaning in the background.
Yeah.
And or like the end of The Exorcist, kind of, when the priest, he's like kind of like he has jumped out of the thing and fallen down all those stairs, and he's kind of twitching. Like that creeps me out.
Like, do you repent for all your sins?
Yeah,
and he can't even answer.
Can't
It's
even
like,
answer.
no.
And so I was like, oh, like that like icks me out. But I feel like that's a very logical thing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
But you know, when I was a kid, because a lot of like people's fears, they kind of go back to when they were a kid. But I think my parents kind of let me watch whatever I wanted because I didn't have a lot of those like fears. Like my number one fear when I was like a small child it was death. But not in the way of like, oh, like there's a monster and he's gonna kill me, or like something like that. It was more just like death at large, where like so much so that when I was a kid, I had a very loose tooth, and I was so afraid that I was gonna like accidentally inhale it in the middle of the night while I was sleeping and like die, that I pulled it out myself. I like yanked it out because I was like, I can't do this. Like this anxiety is too much. Like I don't want to worry about every night when I go to sleep like inhaling this tooth accidentally. And so I just pulled it out myself, which is that's insane to think about as a kid.
But it's not though, because we've had a lot of people interestingly come on the show and talk about how they have various teeth nightmares.
It's a common one.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I don't really have a lot of nightmares personally, but the one that I do have that everyone usually has is the teeth falling out one, which is like extra terrible for some reason, because you wake up and you're like feeling around in your mouth to make sure you have all your teeth, which is such a weird feeling. But no, like I think my fears mostly when I was a kid was dying, kind of in the very like general sense, but it wasn't like a singular monster or anything like that. However, the only movie that did scare me like genuinely like deeply when I was a kid was The Descent.
Oh,
like,
yeah, The Descent is one of the scariest
scared
movies
the
ever.
shit out of me. And I'd seen like a lot of the classics, like I'd seen Halloween, I'd seen Friday the 13th, and you know, The Shining, and movies like that, and I was kind of always like, yeah, those are pretty cool. Didn't really scare me though, but that movie, The Descent, like...
What scared you more, the first half where they're going through the caves, or the second half with the creatures? Because I think the first half is actually scarier.
Either
but
one.
They're both,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, that whole movie is so terrifying
when
to
they're
me.
trying to get through some of those narrow passages and
God.
get stuck, I'm like, oh my god.
And I'm not like a claustrophobia person really
Mm-hmm.
either. I think because I'm a pretty small person, I've been able to kind of fit in small spaces, and so I don't get that feeling a lot of people get. But like something about the darkness and certain things don't scare me, because like The Exorcist didn't like scare me because I don't believe personally in like possession and things like that. But for some reason, The Descent, like that's kind of almost real enough for me to be like, there could be some fucking cave mutant people down in that shit that we haven't like explored, you know? Like that's kind of believable to me, at least. And so the dark and just the way the scares are done in that movie, and so I saw it when I was like 9 or so, and terrified me, and I didn't watch it again until I was like 21, and I went and saw it in a theater, and I was like, you know, I'm an adult now, like this is fine, whatever. And then like literally the first jump scare, I like screamed like
I'm a
so
grown
loud.
up now.
Yeah.
literally I was like, ah! Like
I think the first time I saw The Descent, it was a double feature I did with Wreck for the first time too.
Yeah.
And those are two of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
No, that's it didn't get me like Descent did, but that is also an equally scary movie. And so when I was a kid, that was like the only movie that really did it. And then like to an extent, Silent Hill kind of a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Just I think it's like the dark and like twitchy kind of unpredictable nature of like, because like those nurses kind of freaked me out in that movie.
Anything
but
like humanoid kind of gets me for
Yeah.
sure. You know what I mean? Like
something,
like I don't know, the idea of this has become like obviously much more of a commonplace conversation in mainstream culture now, which is hilarious, because 10 years ago everyone's like, you were crazy, but like aliens, terrifying, because they probably will look and kind of sound maybe similar to real people, but like either hate us or like want to do experiments because we're not nearly on their level, or like, you know what I mean? Like, terrifying.
And I don't know, that's something I can believe in, like personally, like in truth, like I do believe that like we're not alone in the whole vastness of the fucking universe.
I mean, just how narcissistic are humans that we're like, you know,
it's just us, baby.
Yeah, there can't possibly, in the vastness of the universe, be a species that knows as much as us. No way.
Yeah, we're the pinnacle.
Yeah.
This is it? Really?
No, seriously. You know what I mean? And that's a valid fear to me. Yeah. Like, and it makes sense to me. And so, coincidentally, you bring up Aliens. The only other movie that has ever, like, genuinely scared me is Nope, actually.
Ooh, okay.
That movie, like, I saw it in IMAX, and I took a big-ass edible beforehand, so that might have had something to do with it. But it capitalized on one of my, so going to the other direction of fears that I think are a little more particular to me, like, ever since I was a kid, and the very first one happened, I think, in, like, 2005, I've been, like, fascinated with, like, face transplants, like, the medical... thing, the medical procedure of having a face transplant. And I've like done weird, extensive, deep dive research on each one when it happens.
How do you feel about Face Off?
I love that movie. That's honestly one of my favorite movies. And like face transplant like thing aside, I just love John Woo movies, and I don't know, I feel like that's peak just like camp action. Yeah. Like I love it. I love that movie so much. In fact, when I make like sometimes I'll make a list of movies that I think people should watch, and that one's like always at the top of the list. And like sometimes like film bro-y people will be like, what do you mean Face Off? Like, and I was like, well, have you seen it? They're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, end of story. Like, you need to see it. Like, I'm sorry. But I love that movie. But face transplants have been like a thing for me. And so reading about all the face transplants, you end up reading about the one that happened because a woman got mauled by a chimp. And that has been one of my like deep, like, I would never, if I was at a zoo or if I were, they don't really do it in movies as much anymore. Like, if you remember, like, in the late 90s, early aughts, there was, like, all those sports movies with, like, a chimp, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think I would ever do one.
I don't blame the chimp.
No,
like,
me
honestly,
neither. Like,
you know
it's totally, like, I get it, you know? Like, I'm not condoning the action, but, like, I understand, like,
can you imagine?
Unnatural to be like working in a movie as a
primates are weird because of how close they are to people, and you can see it. Like my wife and I went to the zoo and we saw an orangutan like grab something out of a like a branch outside of his cage to get something else, and I was like, that's so fucking human-like. It was weird.
They're human-like enough, and they're smart enough to do fucked up things. I think to be sadistic
because they don't have like the moral boundaries of society.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so that movie, like Nope, and that sequence, like I have never shaken or like trembled out of fear once in my life over anything, and that was the moment. Like, the people I went to go see that movie with, they were like, do we need to leave? Are you okay? And I was like, no, this is great. Like, I've never been this fucking scared during a movie in my entire life. Like, I was shaking. And, like, even the other scene, spoilers, I guess, for Nope, where they're all being digested, and the fact that it's an animal and it's not even a ship, it's an animal, that's so fucking scary to me. Like, that is one of the biggest, like, that's a movie that I've never seen it again. Like, it shook me so
really?
deeply.
Just the ones?
Just the one time in IMAX, you know, on edibles. Like, so scared out of my shit, because also, I don't know, there's just like all these confounding factors in that movie particularly that made it like the perfect movie to scare me so deeply, is that like, it's the being mauled thing, it's the not being completely dead thing, and like still kind of being alive or like half aware of what's going on. And then for some reason it's also on like a sitcom soundstage, which has its own like thing for me as well.
Oh, I bet,
Oh my gosh.
Experienced that as a kid actor.
Yeah, literally. And so I was just like, I was losing my fucking mind. It was so scary. So being mauled by a chimp in that way is like one of my more maybe niche fears, I would say.
I feel like that's but again, it comes back to like, that's a logical fear,
right?
And I think it's like, and perspective is kind of everything, and that's what like makes these films so terrifying, right? It's like, you don't know to be afraid of something until you shift your perspective on it, you know? Like, as a child, just seeing a chimp in a zoo is not terrifying until you start to have the kind of existential crisis of like what it is to be caged. And then it's terrifying, you know?
Well, that, and interestingly, I've just noticed myself as I've gotten older, I've gotten far more sensitive to things. Like, movies that I saw when I was a kid, and I was like, yeah, I guess that's pretty fucked up, but whatever. I like went to go watch as an adult, and I'm like covering my eyes, which I never used to do when I was a kid. And I think when you're, you know, younger, it's not that you lack empathy, it's like you just haven't developed that like part of your brain that can put yourself in the shoes of whoever you're witnessing or whatever. And as a kid, it was kind of like I could understand that these were like crazy fucked up things that I was like watching in this movie, but it wasn't like the actual weight of like the human atrocities had not fully like dawned on me, I guess.
For sure.
Or like I saw Platoon when I was 12 or so. And I was kind of like, yeah, Vietnam War was really fucked up, I guess, when I was 12. And then I went to go watch it in a theater as an adult, and I was like this. I was just like, I can't look, like, this is so horrible. I was like on the verge of tears. I was like, humans are so terrible to each other. Oh my fucking God. But like, that has kind of just been the theme of like my adulthood is kind of is
learning that humans are terrible.
Well, kind of, or just like developing that like that empathetic that makes
100%.
movies hit much harder for me than they used to.
Well, I also think that's part of being a creative and a filmmaker, right? It's like it's our job to be able to understand what it is to suffer, really, what it is to feel, what it is to be
especially
human.
in horror.
Yeah, but like in all genres, but like particularly in horror, like that is, if you don't have that understanding and that empathy, you can't communicate it. I mean, at least for me, and again, I think it runs the gamut, but like you can't be upset about something happening to somebody else if you can't feel like you can put yourself in their shoes.
Right, and to me, it's also like I had to get older to understand like what like major pain felt like, or like, because I didn't do sports or anything when I was a kid. I never broke any bones. Like I kind of was much more like reading books and like, you know, doing acting class and stuff like that. So I hadn't ever like hurt myself really that bad. And so that's also a big part of fear, at least to me, is like expecting this like insane pain, or like being afraid of like this impending like potential like ouch or like mega like hurt, I guess. And so once I got a little older and I had experienced more pain like physically, I was just like, oh, like that's a big part of fear, is like being like anxious about the idea of like you're about to get hurt kind of thing. And I couldn't really do that until I was a little older as well, because when I was a kid I was kind of like, I don't really know how things hurt that much, you know?
Oh, I knew she'd come today. Don't you guys have a film together?
I think we do, and so I think I detect the presence of Miss Barbara.
That's right. You got it.
Oh my God.
Oh,
she's
My
in the
sixth
air.
sense. I could sense her.
Sense her.
Here she comes.
Oh my God. It's
Oh my God! Oh, I've just watched you grow up into this fine young lady.
Oh my God.
It's so great to have you on our show.
It's such an honor to be here.
Well,
like,
when we think about the young actresses that are working today, I mean, you are at the top of the list as far as talent, beauty, smarts,
Oh my
fashion
God.
sense for shoes.
You're gonna make me blush.
Oh my God! We just
Thank
love
you.
you.
I mean, I will tell you, in my house, we stand Miss Barbara Crampton. Just letting you know.
Oh my God!
Like,
mutual love.
It
Mutual
is
love.
very serious.
You know, seeing you guys sit next to each other, she kind of reminds me of your daughter a little bit. I don't know if
Okay,
you've
well,
gotten that.
actually,
Yeah.
now
Well,
that
we're
you
we're
say
plot-
that.
we're
Yeah.
plotting a movie,
Yes.
and I'm gonna play your mother.
Oh, that's
you-
I think I could
No, we're
definitely
already
see that.
we're already
yeah.
talking about it. You don't
It
even
makes
know
so
what we're
because you
talking about.
remind me of my mom a
Oh,
lot. Like my
really?
mom and you look very
Yeah.
similar. Like my mom was, you know, Texas beauty, like, you know, blonde, blue eyed,
Yeah.
like, tan back in the day, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so like you guys look very similar.
But I think you're right. She does look like Olivia a little
Yeah.
bit.
She
I need
does.
to meet her because you're not the
Yeah.
first person that has said that. Like I've had a couple people tell me that
Right.
now, and I'm like, man, I need to meet her.
Yeah,
On
you
her
guys should
girls'
check.
days
Picture
when
when
she's
we're done,
home.
but-
Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about movies that scare you or things that scare you. And so there was a couple things that I was thinking about. Have you ever seen that movie Eyes Without a Face?
Yes.
Okay. Because you didn't mention that, and you
Yes.
said that scares you, like thinking about a face, like
No, it does,
Right?
and like face maiming or like some like a specific. Because I feel like a lot of horror people have like certain gore that like is their thing that freaks them out, and mine's like a head squish or like a
Yeah.
face something, because that's like what we connect to most as like people. And I think that's why face transplants like were so
transplants.
Yeah.
fascinating.
That was the first horror movie that I ever saw.
Eyes Without a Face.
Oh,
Yes,
cool.
and
Oh my
I didn't
God.
know what I was watching, and I was by
Oh.
myself at home, and it was like the $1 million movie
Yeah.
that came on at 4:00 in the
Oh,
afternoon or something, and I
wow.
was sitting there, and I might have been 9 or 10, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, whoa, what is? I didn't even know what a horror movie was,
Yeah.
and it was on TV.
Oh my god.
And it was so scary to me.
I'm so jealous you got to experience it that way, because when I watched it for the first time, I was an adult, and it was on the Criterion channel, and so I was like, I knew about it, and I'd seen like a part of the big scene with the face and stuff like that, so it had been spoiled for me in a way that it didn't hit me quite as hard as I think it could have had I gone in completely like not knowing anything.
Right.
But I love that movie.
I love that movie so much. It's so creepy. What about the movie Tusk? How do you feel about that movie? Because that's like taking it to the next level. Face, a whole body transplant.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That movie almost occupies a different thing for me. It doesn't like freak me out or make me feel like so scared, but like it's so fascinating, and it's almost kind of camp to me. Like the whole idea is just so insane and ridiculous that it was more like I can't take my eyes away from like what is happening.
It viscerally got to me.
Yeah?
Like I was really disturbed watching Justin Long, I guess it was, moving in that suit.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's become a different being.
Yeah.
And no, that also really scared me.
It's very effective, because I remember watching it, and it wasn't as much like, I was just more like, what the fuck?
Right, fascinated.
Like, yeah,
This
it
is
was
crazy.
like, I can't, I'm sickened but curious.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stop looking, but like, this is freaking me out a little bit.
And then you were talking about Mandy being one of your favorite movies, or your favorite movie. Yeah. And then it made me think or wonder, you've been in the business for so long. What do you want to do going forward? What is it? Because Mandy occupies a certain space within the horror genre that's like kind of esoteric horror, just like out there. It's kind of just, I don't know, it's very artistic and emotional from a deep, deep place. And it almost, the narrative doesn't even matter as much as what's going on in the people and what they're feeling. So there's something about that really touches a lot of us, and is now, because the world is so fucked up and changing. Anyway, this is a multifaceted question, but does that movie or anything else that's going on today, or where you are, or where you've been, give you any impetus to thinking where you want to be in the future in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I brought up when you asked me about actresses and horror and stuff like that, I brought up Andrea Riseborough's work in Possessor and Mandy, because she is a big idol for me in that respect, because I think she looks and acts and is completely different from role to role. It's like she never does the same thing twice, or it never feels like she's repeating anything. And that's kind of, if I had like a goal for my career, it would really it'd be to just do something different each time. And I think that's why I end up just naturally sticking to horror a lot, because it offers you a lot of those opportunities to like just change yourself completely. And I love doing like very like disappearing into my work kind of thing, where I can like really create like a unique person from the ground up with a filmmaker. Like I love that collaboration, and I love doing all kinds of research and changing my appearance really drastically. And so Mandy is honestly just a movie that I love, and I'd love to be in something that's kind of more sort of meditative and stylistic like that, and like what you were saying, a little more like abstract and artistic in terms of like the emotional through line. That's definitely a goal of mine. And then, like I said, just like doing something like completely different. I'd love to just be a completely different person. My goal is, if I'm doing it right, is that it seems like I don't repeat myself too much either. And actors, we all have our niche, and we all have like our bread and butter, as I would say. Mine is bratty daughter or angsty girl. But when I get the opportunity to kind of break out of that, that's the most satisfying work.
Okay, noted for the thing that
we're
writing
when
for you.
you're my awesome mom.
Yes. Okay, now it's time to play the sidebar.
Yeah.
Woo! Okay. So all these games were invented by Catherine, because she's so
Oh my
awesome.
God, yes.
I don't know if they all work, but we try.
And we're going to start with an image or something, a few lines of a possible dream that we all collectively create. So I'll start, and I'll say a few things about the dream, and then you can add, and then you can add, and then
Okay.
and then we're gonna do it with Skelly Sam.
Oh, Skelly Sam. We haven't been acquainted yet. Hello.
He's been listening.
Skelly
He's
Sam.
listening. He's a man of few words.
And then
or woman.
And then how do we end the dream? It's like, how do we wake up? Do we know, or it's just gonna happen on its own?
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen on its own. and we're gonna wake up.
You know, it's hard to find the motivation to have a balanced diet when you're cooking everything from scratch and spending hours chopping vegetables.
But Factor has a solution. Factor sends chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals right to your door. All you have to do is heat them up.
Yeah, they have dozens of meal options to choose from and more than 60 add-on items to shake things up.
Whether you're a vegan, a vegetarian, counting calories, or keto, Factor has the meals that you'll love without the piles of dirty dishes. Do you use Factor, James?
Yeah, because I hate dirty dishes and I hate spending time cooking. I don't have the time. I don't
know.
have the time.
I know, it's a bummer because I love to cook, but I feel like just in the day and with all the stuff that we do, I just don't have time, and then I sacrifice health over, eating something quick. But with Factor, I don't have to do that because it comes straight to your door.
You have convenience and good food.
Yeah, you can pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. So when we're traveling, we're doing conventions, doesn't matter. We can just pick them back up. Factor works with you and for you.
That's right. Head to factormeals.com/ScreamDreams50 and use code ScreamDreams50 to get 50% off.
Yeah, that's code ScreamDreams50 at factormeals.com/ScreamDreams50 to get 50% off. You know what's a nightmare? Dehydration.
Yeah, you know what's an even worse nightmare? Plastic pollution.
That's why we love Liquid Death and their evil mission to murder your thirst and kill plastic pollution.
That's right. Their aluminum cans are as metal as they get. So pick some up today because we all need something refreshing to reach for when we wake up from a nightmare.
It's true. Cheers.
Right now, we want to go into our nightmare. So this is how our nightmare starts. Okay. I am in my bed and my cat is clawing my face. You are me. We're all me.
Okay.
My cat is clawing my face. All of a sudden, my face comes off. And I have all these scratches on my face. And then the cat starts pulling at my tooth.
Oh, okay. On that note, cat's pulling at my tooth.
You kind of fed me that.
Okay.
With what you were saying.
Okay. Cat's pulling at my tooth, and then cat kind of hits one of those nerves that's in your teeth, and all my teeth sort of fall out in like a string. Like it's unraveled the thread that's keeping all of my teeth together. They all start to fall out, and I'm so horrified that I bolt up out of bed and I look in the mirror to try to look for my teeth, and all I see is this red gash that my cat has clawed into my face with no teeth, and I'm horrified. I let out like an insane scream because I don't recognize myself, and now my first person experience is even vastly different because now I can't feel my teeth and I'm trying to speak and I can't, and all this blood's coming out. So yeah, on that note, I'm looking in the mirror, horrified.
And I'm so horrified. I don't know what to do. Do I fix my face or my teeth? And panic that I'll lose the teeth. I find a needle and thread and I start collecting the teeth and trying to tie them back together so that I can sew them back into my mouth.
But right when I get all the teeth strung together in a way that they will perfectly just reaffix into my mouth, the cat jumps up and steals them and takes the string of teeth in its mouth and runs out the door and down the hall, and I follow it. And when I walk out the door and turn into the hall, I see a strange figure standing at the end of it, who the cat jumps into their arms and accepts the string of teeth as payment. And the cat looks at me with a knowing look, glad to have stolen these teeth for its own purposes.
But then I look deeper into the mist and I see who that figure is. It's Nicolas Cage. And I think to myself, Nicolas Cage has come to save the day and avenge me of the cat stealing tooth stealer animal. And then Nicolas Cage then offers his hand to me and says, don't worry, Sierra. I love you just the way you are. My wife has died, and I've avenged her death, and now you should be my new bride.
I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do with all of this information. I'm still bleeding out of my eye sockets. and my mouth and my face. And I look at Nicolas Cage and I say, I don't know if I'm ready to make a commitment of this magnitude right now in this current state that I'm in. Can you help me maybe sew my face back on first? And he looks at me and he goes, what do you mean? Nothing's wrong. And I'm taken aback because surely you notice the blood oozing from my what was once my face and is now just an angry red thing of muscle. But he seems completely unaware. And so now I'm running down the hallways of my apartment building trying to find anyone to believe me that my face is actually gone and my teeth are actually out of my mouth, but everyone seems to think that I'm just fine. So now I'm panicked trying to convince everyone that no, there is something wrong with me. Look, and I look in the mirror and I'm still bloody and faceless, but everyone else seems to think that this is just how I've always looked.
And I continue running down the hallway. The hallway is filled with doors, and each door I open and there are different people in there. And every time I go in, I tell the people, don't you see I have no face? And they just look at me and say, Sierra, it's all about perspective. And then I start thinking to myself, what is perspective? Is this real? Is this a dream? Am I running in circles, or have I really not had a face this entire time? And I just didn't know. And so I turn back to Nicolas Cage and he says, yes, I hate to break this to you, but you've never had a face. This isn't a dream. You've never had a face, Sierra, and everyone has just been nice to you, making you think you had a face so that you wouldn't be embarrassed.
And then I wake up because that's messed up.
Yay! Then you wake up. But at least you got to be in a dream with Nicolas.
Yes, thank you for that. That was like the one nice spot, that one reprieve in the dream. From all the horror that is. Maybe what's interesting is the horror is not being perceived, but it's how I perceive myself. It's not how everyone else is perceiving me.
This is so meta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so deep.
Yeah.
How you perceive yourself is very different than how others really perceive you. When other people talk about me or whatever, it sounds weird to me.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like,
right?
wait, that's what you think of me? That's
of
not
me?
what I've thought of myself. Oh no.
Right?
It can be a real mindfuck in a way for like seeing how other people actually perceive you, which is kind of almost impossible to know as well, because everyone has their own perspective and experience, and they're going to perceive you based on factors in their life and etc.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But their own, they see you through their own, lens.
Yeah.
Their own
their
incomplete
criteria.
understanding of you too.
Right.
They're
And
like,
then
no,
there's
that's
this-
not me, and they're like, but that's my interpretation of
Right.
you.
And then there's the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
About who we really are.
I've been told
inside.
anyone you meet that things that you like or dislike about them is just a mirror for yourself.
Exactly. Right?
It's like always things you like or dislike about yourself.
That's why I like everybody. And on that note, that's the end of the sidebar. See you later.
Oh.
Well,
And like that, she's gone.
I know, just like that. It's good while it lasted, though. We always try to ask our guests what their nightlight is. So, and what we mean by nightlight is like the thing that keeps you going amidst all the maybe mundane but also kind of negative things in the world or scary things. What's the thing that when you wake up from the nightmare or otherwise real world thing, what's the light that keeps you going? Is it a loaf of a cat? Is it like
wow.
What is it?
A loaf of a cat.
A loaf of a cat, man. Yeah, it could be a lot of things. I think it might change day to day for me, because sometimes it is the loaf of a cat for me. And talking about fear, my cat recently passed away.
Oh, I'm so
which
sorry.
is very sad. Yeah. But that event has caused like a domino effect that capitalizes on my fears, and it's not the fear of like my pet dying. That's like a terrible thing, but it's not like a fear. It's like because my cat is not there anymore, and he was the thing that was keeping this fear from me. I have like a deep fear of insects. Like I have a deep fear of bugs. And so lately I have been encountering, specifically it's crickets. Like specifically, like it's a genuine, it's a genuine phobia. Like crickets, grasshoppers, locusts, things in that family particularly freak me out like very, very deeply. If you ever see me like see one, it's a pretty like physical response. But he was unknowingly like keeping all of that at bay for me. And so I've been dealing with one of my most sort of like tangible real fears like lately. And so I've been having to sort of navigate that. Like it's been like every single night I'll find like, and it's like coincidentally when my partner's gone and he's the one that always kills the bugs for me because it doesn't bother him, but like coincidentally it's always when he's like gone or whatever.
Do you have a salt gun?
A salt gun? What
Yes,
is a salt gun?
We have one. It's a little plastic
A
shotgun
gun
that
for
you load
bugs?
with table salt.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
shoot those bugs, they fucking
This is-
explode.
I need to-
Oh my god, that's
Oh my
so
God.
upsetting for
No,
me.
it's
Put them
I'm
awesome.
outside.
I'm sorry.
Bugs. Listen, I am so empathetic towards every animal.
Every
I do
living
not
creature,
count bugs.
Even
They-
like things that other people are afraid of, like rats and mice. I'm
Yeah.
like, they're fine.
No,
Like,
they're fine.
I don't want
They're
one
little
on me
critters.
because they have diseases
But
and
bugs,
shit. But like,
that
no, fucking die.
that branch splits way high up enough from us for me to like not consider them. Fuck
No.
bugs.
You know, maybe it's because my pet probably keeps them at bay. But
Yeah.
Probably.
like, you know,
And this was unbeknownst to me. Like,
Exactly. We have a cat. We've had a cat for like going on 10 years. We just got a dog last year. And once we got the dog, the cat doesn't roam as much. And so this past year, a lot more bugs.
Yeah.
Like, damn it, Molly, you're keeping Lucy from doing her job.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it's like I had no idea that my boy was protecting me in that way until recently. And so I've been facing, honestly, one of my biggest, most like I said, tangible fears. It's not this kind of idea or this existential kind of whatever. It's like a literal thing that I am like is active. I feel like I'm being hunted for sport, trying to hunt this fucking bug for sport or
Do
not.
bugs
for sport.
in movies scare you or
Not
freak
as
you out?
much. So
Okay.
like I
It's
don't
when
love
it's in person.
like movies with bugs. Obviously, it's not my favorite, but I love Candyman and like
The
Mummy?
or what's there's like a
that
great
is gross. That Beatles.
Which
Yeah,
one?
the Scare Beetles and
Oh.
the Mummy. Yeah.
like
Exorcist 2 is full of locusts.
Oh,
and
really?
crickets.
I
Yeah,
haven't
so.
seen Exorcist 2, so great
many
to
people
know.
have,
Thank you. But no, it's. I also I do struggle because I wonder. I'm like, man, if my dream role of a lifetime, if like Lars von Trier called me and was like, I want you to be in my next movie, but it's about a woman who like is one with the fucking crickets or like is like bathes in a bathtub of like beetles or some
We
shit.
could do it too.
No, I'd have to, I'm like, would I have to decline? Like, I don't know if I could do it. Like,
Wow.
it freaks me out
No
that
fear
badly.
factor.
Like, I might have to just like dissociate completely and like fuck up my brain. I don't know, because it's such a deep fear. And so for a while, or like lately, I've been having to maybe rely on my nightlights a little bit more after like having to deal with that. So I'd say calling my sister, like my sister and I are very close, and so after I've had to kill each one of these bugs, I'll like call her and be like, I had to kill a bug. That, or I don't know, like self-expression maybe is one of those those for me, whether that's through like I don't know, like through makeup or through style or through making something like a movie or something like that, or even making something very small and cute with your hands. Like I make these little felt like fruits with little faces sometimes.
cool.
And so doing stuff like that, or watching or listening to or reading or looking at like art that excites me and makes me feel something, like that can kind of be that for me. And I'm also very extroverted, so maybe like going out and being with other people can be one of those like nightlights for me. Like that's definitely, I think I'm like on the minority here because I get like energy at like the hangout, and so that energy kind of sustains me to be able to be by myself and like have to do those times when I'm like not around other people.
Yeah.
But that almost is what like relaxes me, is like being in like a big social setting. So that I think that would be probably one of the one of the things. It's like a nightlight, I guess.
Well, thank you for hanging with us.
thank
Yeah.
This has been
This was
so
so fun.
Hopefully
great.
recharged you a bit.
Yeah, no, this is gonna like sustain me for a little while I have to be alone. So this is
Great.
great.
Glad. Where can the people find out about your next projects? The people of the internet, the people of the audio
people
space.
of the internet. I have a movie called The Edge of Everything that's going to have kind of a limited little theatrical run later this year. And then I have another movie called The Last Stop in Yuma County, in which I get to co-star with the legendary Miss Barbara Crampton, even though we don't share any scenes, sadly. And that'll be out later this year, I think in the spring as well, in like a small theatrical kind of run. So that'll be exciting. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you guys. This was so fun.
If you liked what you heard, please tell us. Like, subscribe, share, follow, do the things, tell your friends.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell. Always ring the bell. I still don't even know what that is. I'm going to be honest. Subscribe. We release episodes every Wednesday. If you want early, full length, not cut,
Uncut.
uncut. Also, no ad-free episodes. They air on Mondays on our Patreon. Please subscribe. Until next time, thank you for joining us. I'm Catherine Corcoran.
And I'm James A. Janisse. Be sure to leave the light on.
Yes, you would do.